Once upon a time, in a city bursting with glass towers and executive swagger, there lived a woman named Mrs. Amara, widow of the late Joseph Kinty, the man whose vision built the entire Orion Enterprises empire. Their legacy was built on hard work, sacrifice, and relentless integrity. But now, years after her husband's passing, Mrs. Amara's focus was not on profit margins or quarterly growth. It was on her only son, Denzel. He had studied abroad, molded into a gentleman by the Ivy Leagues and the cold winds of experience. And now he was returning to take the helm of the company. But beneath Mrs. Amara's calm, graceful smile hid a pressing worry that kept her awake at night. Who would Denzel choose to stand beside him? She had seen too many gold diggers wrap themselves around men like snakes dressed in silk, beautiful on the outside, hollow on the inside. She refused to watch her son fall into such a trap. And so, she made a decision most would consider insane, a decision only a mother could justify. She would disguise herself as a cleaner at Orion Enterprises. No one would know her true identity. No boardroom, no chauffeured cars, no designer heels, just a mop, a bucket, and a faded scarf. She wanted to observe, not from a penthouse, but from the floor literally. And so, on a Monday morning that smelled of ambition and coffee beans, she stepped into the lobby wearing an oversized blouse, rubber slippers, and a head wrap tied so carelessly it looked like an afterthought. Her back ached already, but her resolve was iron. The moment she entered, conversations paused. Laughter followed. One of the receptionists leaned toward another and whispered loud enough to be cruel. "Who let this woman in here? Does she think this is a shelter?" Another voice, sharper and soaked in perfume, joined in. "Maybe she wandered in from some bus stop downtown." Mrs. Amara didn't flinch. She had dined with the presidents and spoken at summits. But now she was invisible. Irrelevant. A shadow mopping floors. And as she pushed her mop across the polished marble, she scanned the room not for approval, but for hearts. That's when she noticed Elise. A young woman seated at her corner desk, typing steadily, not even glancing up at the commotion. She didn't laugh. She didn't smirk. She didn't even look annoyed. Just calm, grounded, real. That was enough to spark curiosity. The next day, Mrs. Amara returned. Her back screamed in protest, but she ignored it. In her hand was the same mop. On her face, the same expressionless mask. Crystal and Tasha were already waiting. Their stilettos tapped impatiently on the tile, their gossip sharp enough to cut glass. "Oh, look," Crystal said, tilting her head mockingly. "The relic returned. I swear, at her speed we'll be late for our own promotions." Tasha giggled. "Maybe she needs one of those old people walkers." They howled. Elise again said nothing. But this time, her eyes flickered briefly toward Mrs. Amara, and for a moment, they met respectful, quiet eyes. Mrs. Amara smiled beneath her mask. Later that day, while wiping the hallway, Mrs. Amara accidentally spilled her bucket just outside the washroom. As she knelt to clean it, Crystal stormed past, pretending to slip, and shouted, "Watch it, Grandma," before pushing her. Mrs. Amara fell hard. Her hip collided with the floor, her bucket rattling beside her, water splashing like laughter in the lobby. And there was laughter. Loud, cruel. Crystal smirked. "Hope she has insurance." Tasha snapped a photo on her phone, whispering, "This will go viral." But just as Mrs. Amara was trying to push herself up, a pair of hands reached out. Soft, young, Elise. "Are you all right, ma'am?" she whispered, gently helping her up. She didn't flinch at the smell of soap or the worn fabric. She didn't care that her designer skirt brushed against a wet floor. She cared that someone had fallen. "Thank you, my daughter," Mrs. Amara said softly, unable to stop the tear that threatened to form. That evening, she cooked. Not for herself, but as a test. Peanut soup and fufu, comfort food, rich with memory. The kind of meal that told the truth when eaten. The next day, she placed a bowl in the break room and sat down, alone. Crystal walked in first, her nose wrinkling. "What is that smell?" Tasha laughed. "It's earthy." They left. Elise walked in, paused, and then walked over. "Good afternoon, ma'am," she greeted warmly. "Good afternoon, my daughter," Mrs. Amar replied, surprised but steady. Elise sat down. "That smells incredible. Did you cook it?" "Yes," Mrs. Amara nodded. Elise smiled. "May I try?" Crystal, entering again, stopped mid-lip gloss application. "Oh, Elise, are you seriously eating that?" Elise didn't even turn. "Yes, I am." And she took a bite, slowly, with dignity. "This tastes like my grandmother's food," she said with a warm smile. "It tastes like home." That night, Mrs. Amara cried, not because she was hurt, but because after so long surrounded by sycophants, fake smiles, and curated charity, she had finally found something real. She had found Elise. The next morning, she staged one final test, another accidental fall in the washroom. This time, she groaned, clutching her hip again, her bucket splayed dramatically. Crystal and Tasha appeared, again offering cruel commentary. "Maybe she's doing this for attention," Crystal smirked. "We're not nurses," Tasha added. But then Elise entered. She dropped her lunch, ran to Mrs. Amara, and without hesitation rolled up her sleeves. "I got you," she whispered. "Let's get you up, ma'am." Then she wiped the floor, ignoring the stares, the whispers, the camera flashes. She helped Mrs. Amara to a chair and sat beside her. "You're not alone," she said, and in that moment Mrs. Amara made her decision. Elise had passed every test, every storm, every whisper. She wasn't loud. She wasn't flashy. She was the kind of woman who lifted others without asking what they could give her in return. That night, Mrs. Amara stood over a pot of boiling soup again, not as a test, but as a mother preparing a meal for someone she was beginning to love like her own. She invited Elise for dinner. Elise arrived, expecting a shack. What she found was a modest but beautiful home filled with grace. "Mama," Elise said that night as they finished their meal, "I don't know what it is about you, but I feel safe here." And, for the first time in years, Mrs. Amara laughed. A full, open laugh. Because the girl didn't even know who she was. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She wasn't hunting for a promotion. She was just kind. And tomorrow, when Denzel walked through those doors, everything would begin. But tonight, the old woman and the young girl sat under one roof, bonded by soup, silence, and something unspoken. A beginning. The morning Denzel returned, Orion Enterprises seemed to hum with a different kind of electricity. Word had spread quickly he was arriving today. Not just the son of the late Joseph Kinty, but the future CEO. Women rushed into the restroom with foundation kits and curling irons, spritzing themselves with perfume that clung to the air like ambition. Men straightened ties and polished shoes, as though wealth itself were about to step off the elevator. Mrs. Amara, in her cleaner's disguise, pushed her mop slowly through the hallway. She watched them all. The vanity, the panic, the rehearsed elegance, All except Elise, who sat calmly at her desk, typing her morning reports, her hair pulled back in a low bun, her blouse simple but neat. She had no idea that everything was about to change. When the elevator dinged and the doors opened, silence fell like a curtain. Denzel stepped out, tall and sharp in a navy suit that fit like a tailored secret. His presence was effortless, the kind of confidence not learned but inherited. Eyes followed him like magnets. Tasha leaned over to Crystal and whispered, "Girl, he looks like he was born in a Vogue spread." Crystal smiled, her voice dripping sugar. "I'll be the first to greet him." But Denzel barely glanced at the eager faces lining the hallway. Instead, he frowned slightly as he noticed an older woman hunched over a mop near the entrance. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said gently. "Where is the janitorial team? Why are you cleaning this floor alone?" Mrs. Amara turned slowly, feigning surprise, but her heart was beating fast. He had noticed her, not with pity, but with concern. Before she could reply, Crystal swooped in, flashing a too bright smile. "Oh, sir, don't worry about her," she said quickly. "She's just the cleaner. She's used to this kind of thing." Denzel's expression darkened. "Used to it?" His voice was calm but sharp. "Does that mean she should be treated like furniture?" Crystal blinked, unprepared. Elise stood then, her voice soft but clear. "She deserves all the respect in the world." Denzel turned. Their eyes met, and for a second, time didn't move. Elise didn't smile. She didn't bat lashes. She simply met his gaze with sincerity that landed like a quiet storm. Something inside Denzel shifted. Not like falling, more like remembering something you never knew you missed. "Thank you," he said softly. She nodded and returned to her seat, her cheeks slightly flushed. Mrs. Amara, still holding the mop, watched carefully. That night, she sat in her small but warm living room preparing another meal. Elise had agreed to return for dinner. It wasn't just food this time. It was a declaration. She was testing not Elise's palate, but her soul. When Elise arrived, she brought a small wrapped box banana bread she had baked herself. "I don't have much," she said shyly, "but I wanted to share something of mine, too." Mrs. Amara smiled, her chest swelling with emotion. They ate slowly, sharing stories of childhood, grief, and small joys. Elise never asked about the house or why it looked too neat, too graceful for a cleaner. She didn't probe. She didn't calculate. She simply stayed present. As they cleared the plates, Mrs. Amara placed her hand gently on Elise's. "My daughter," she said softly, "you must be careful." Elise looked up, frowning slightly. "What do you mean, Mama?" Mrs. Amara hesitated. "You are kind, and kindness makes people uncomfortable, especially the ones who wear their ambition like armor." Elise smiled sadly. "I know, Mama. The office, it's not easy." Just then, her phone buzzed. A message. She picked it up and read slowly, confusion darkening her brow. "Meet me at Grand Royal Hotel. Tomorrow at 7 p.m. alone. I have something important to tell you." Mrs. Amara's eyes narrowed. "Who sent that?" Elise shook her head. "It's from an unknown number." Mrs. Amara exhaled slowly. Something about it felt off, dangerous. But she didn't want to alarm the girl. She simply said, "Be careful. Not everything that shines is gold." The next evening, Elise walked into the Grand Royal Hotel's marble lobby, her heels clicking softly against the gleaming floor. Her heart pounded. She didn't know why she came. Curiosity, maybe, or something deeper. She scanned the room. And then she saw her Crystal seated confidently in the far corner, legs crossed, a smirk on her lips. "I should have known," Elise muttered. Crystal waved her over. "Come, sit. Let's talk." Elise approached cautiously, arms folded. "What do you want?" Crystal leaned in, voice silky. "I'm going to give you one chance. Take this envelope, quit the company, and disappear." She slid the thick brown envelope across the table. Elise stared at it. "You're joking." "No," Crystal replied, her smile razor sharp. "You're too plain, too soft, and now Denzel's noticing you. That's a problem." Elise opened the envelope slowly. Her breath caught. Money. A lot of it. Her rent was overdue. Her little brother's school fees hung like a thread over their heads. Her mother's hospital bills waited like wolves. She could take it. No one would know. She could walk away. But her hands trembled as she pushed the envelope back. "No," Crystal's eyes, I see, darkened. "You'll regret this." Elise stood. "Maybe. But I won't regret being myself." She walked away, her knees shaking, her heart beating erratically. She had passed the test, but she didn't know she was being watched. In the far corner, hidden behind oversized sunglasses and a shawl, Mrs. Amara sipped her tea. She had seen everything. Elise hadn't just passed a test. She had earned something sacred. Trust. That night, as Elise tried to sleep, her phone buzzed again. Another message, this time more sinister. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." Her blood ran cold. She turned the phone face down and whispered into the darkness, "God, protect me." The next morning, she arrived at the office early, but something was wrong. People stared, whispered, laughed behind hands. Elise frowned. Then she saw Crystal standing confidently in the middle of the open-plan room, her phone held high. "Everyone, listen to this," she announced. She pressed play. Elise's own voice filled the air but twisted, edited. Crystal had cut the conversation to make it sound like Elise was bragging. "Denzel already noticed me. It's only a matter of time before he starts chasing me." The office exploded in laughter. "So much for humble," someone sneered. "Little Miss Innocent is just a player like the rest of us," another added. Elise's face burned. She tried to speak, but her throat betrayed her. Crystal stepped close, whispering, "Next time take the money." Just then, Denzel walked out of his office, brows furrowed. "What's going on here?" The room went silent. Crystal quickly pocketed her phone. "Oh, nothing, sir. Just a little joke." "Step into my office," he said coldly. "Now." Crystal paled. "Sir, really, it was harmless." "I said now." She followed him in, suddenly quiet. Denzel turned to Elise, his voice softer. "Are you all right?" Elise nodded, barely, but inside she was falling apart. That evening, Mrs. Amara invited her again for dinner. Elise came, tired and shaken. Over bowls of hot soup, Mrs. Amara looked into her eyes and asked quietly, "Tell me the truth. Do you have feelings for Denzel?" Elise nearly choked. "Mama, no, I barely know him." Mrs. Amara studied her face. She was telling the truth. That was enough, for now. "Then listen to me carefully," she said. "These girls won't stop. You must be strong." Elise nodded. "Why do you care so much about me?" Mrs. Amara hesitated. She couldn't reveal the truth yet. "Because, my daughter, I see something special in you." Elise smiled, tears prickling her eyes, but neither of them knew that someone else had just entered the game. And this time, it wouldn't be about insults or gossip. It would be war. The sun had barely crept above the skyline when Elise heard the knock at her door. A sharp double tap, followed by silence so thick it felt like the world was holding its breath. Still groggy from a restless night filled with thoughts of whispers, betrayal, and fake recordings, she shuffled toward the door, expecting perhaps a neighbor or a delivery gone wrong. But when she opened it, her breath froze in her throat. Two uniformed officers stood there, solemn-faced, one holding a clipboard, the other already reaching for his handcuffs. "Are you Elise Arliston?" the taller one asked, his voice flat but final. "Yes," she answered, confused, the word barely more than a whisper. "You're under arrest for theft and corporate fraud," the officer said, already stepping forward. Before Elise could say a word, cold metal encircled her wrists, the click of the cuffs echoing like gunshots in her chest. "What? No, I haven't," she tried to explain, to scream, to fight, but the hallway was already alive with curious eyes peeking from cracked doors, murmuring her name like it was now poison. "I didn't do anything," she cried as they led her away, but her words fell flat against the concrete stairwell as shame wrapped around her like a noose. At the station, the world turned colder. She sat in a holding cell that smelled of bleach and despair, her hands trembling, her knees weak. Her mind refused to process the accusation. Theft? Fraud? She had never even touched the company accounts. She didn't even know where the finance department physically sat in the building. Hours passed. Then a guard returned, glancing at her with mild annoyance. "You've been bailed," he muttered, unlocking the cell. Elise stood shakily, her heart pounding. "Who?" The guard shrugged. "She's waiting outside." As Elise stepped into the sterile waiting area, her eyes widened. Mrs. Amara stood there, still in her faded clothes but her posture firm, her eyes fierce with sorrow. "Mama," Elise whispered, her voice cracking, "I swear I didn't," but Mrs. Amara stepped forward and pulled her into an embrace, whispering near her ear, "I know, my daughter. I believe you." And Elise collapsed into her arms, sobbing without restraint for the first time since it all began. Meanwhile, across town, Crystal sat in a luxury suite with a glass of champagne in one hand and satisfaction dancing behind her lashes. Tasha scrolled through her phone beside her, reading aloud, "People are saying Denzel stormed out of the office. They think he's going to see Elise." Crystal rolled her eyes and took a slow sip. "Let him," she said. "She'll be unemployed by Friday, maybe locked up by next week. The company won't survive a scandal like this with someone like her. And he won't risk it." Tasha hesitated. "Framing someone, it's a lot." Crystal's smile turned ice cold. "She had her chance. I gave her a way out. She chose war." Back at her modest home, Elise sat curled up on the couch while Mrs. Amara prepared tea, her hand steady though her heart ached. "Mama," Elise said quietly, "why would someone do this? I've never touched company money. I don't even know how." Mrs. Amara returned, placing the cup in her hand and sitting beside her. She took Elise's hand gently. "Sometimes good hearts attract sharp knives. Envy, my daughter, wears many faces. Some smile at you while sharpening their blades behind your back." Elise sighed, pressing the warm cup to her lips. "I feel like I'm drowning, and I don't even know where the water's coming from." Mrs. Amara wanted so desperately to reveal everything, that she wasn't just some cleaner with a warm smile, that Denzel was her son, that she was the founder's widow, that she had power enough to crush Crystal with a word. But she didn't. Because the test wasn't over. Because if Elise were to rise, she needed to rise for who she was, not who Mrs. Amara could make her. That same moment, Denzel stood in his office, his tie loose, his eyes scanning a headline he wished he could erase with a swipe. Junior staffer arrested in Orion fraud scandal. Elise's photo, blurry and unflattering, sat beneath it. His stomach dropped. This wasn't right. Something inside him screamed that she couldn't have done this. He grabbed his car keys and stormed out. Crystal's words echoed in his mind, her forced laugh, her defensive tone when asked about the office drama. It didn't add up. Nothing did. At the same time, Crystal's phone buzzed. She frowned, picking it up. Unknown number. "Hello?" she said. Silence. Then a raspy voice whispered through the line. "You've made a terrible mistake." She jerked upright. "Who is this?" The voice didn't answer. It just breathed. Then the line went dead. Crystal sat frozen, her hand trembling, the champagne forgotten. She suddenly felt like the air had thickened, like someone was watching, like something was coming. The next morning, Denzel stood with security staff at the company's tech room. "Pull up the CCTV footage from last week. I want every second Elise was in the building." The technician swallowed hard. "Sir, it's missing. That week's footage has been deleted. All of it." Denzel's blood went cold. "Deleted? Who authorized that?" "We don't know, sir." Denzel stepped back, his mind racing. Someone had covered their tracks, and Elise had been telling the truth. He had doubted her, publicly. He clenched his fists. This wasn't just about love anymore. It was about justice. At that same moment, Elise sat in her kitchen, staring at the steam curling from her tea. "Mama," she said quietly, "am I being punished for being kind?" Mrs. Amara shook her head slowly. "You are being tested for being good in a world that rewards cruelty." Elise looked down. "Then what if I fail?" Mrs. Amara smiled. "Then you rise and try again." A knock came at the door. Elise stood, her heart suddenly leaping into her throat. She opened it slowly. Denzel stood there, his eyes searching her face for something truth, maybe, or forgiveness. She stepped aside, letting him in. "I need to know the truth," he said softly. "Did you steal the money?" Elise met his gaze. Her eyes didn't flicker. "No," she whispered. "I swear, on everything I have, I didn't." He believed her. He knew in his gut. He had seen enough lies to recognize truth when it stood bare. "Do you know who did?" Elise hesitated. She suspected Crystal, of course, but she had no proof. "No," she said quietly. Denzel nodded slowly. "I'll find out," he said. "And if I do, I'll make it right." As he turned to leave, Elise asked, her voice trembling, "Do you still believe in me?" Denzel paused at the door, his voice low but certain. "I never stopped." That night, Crystal dreamt of eyes watching her, of hallways filled with whispers, of cleaners and shadows who knew too much. She woke up drenched in sweat at exactly 3:00 a.m. Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. The message read, "The cleaner knows." She dropped the phone. Somewhere, in a quiet room filled with the scent of herbs and old books, Mrs. Amara sat writing something down. A list, a name, a plan. The war wasn't coming. It had already begun. The morning of the company's quarterly town hall arrived wrapped in the kind of tension that made even the marble floors feel sharp beneath polished shoes. The executive lounge had been converted into a gleaming presentation hall, velvet curtains drawn back, media teams adjusting lights, and a row of board members seated like silent statues beneath the Orion logo. Whispers passed like wildfire Denzel would be addressing the company for the first time since the scandal broke. Elise sat at her desk, her head low, heart hammering like it was trying to escape her chest. She hadn't been fired, not officially. But the stares hadn't stopped. The muttered insults, the passive-aggressive questions about her new lifestyle now that she had extra money in the bank. Crystal walked past with a triumphant click of her heels, her perfume clouding the air like arrogance. "You should sit near the back today," she said sweetly, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Wouldn't want the camera to catch you if the police show up again." Tasha laughed. Elise didn't respond. She just held her pen tighter. At exactly 10 a.m., Denzel stepped onto the stage. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He simply stood tall in a charcoal gray suit and scanned the crowd with a gaze that dared anyone to blink first. "Good morning," he began, voice steady. "Today I was expected to speak about performance metrics, acquisitions, and projections, but none of that matters right now. Not when integrity has been compromised within these walls." The room stiffened. Crystal crossed her legs but couldn't stop the flicker of panic in her eyes. Denzel continued. "Last week, a young woman in this company was arrested based on circumstantial evidence. Her name is Elise Arliston. She was accused of stealing from Orion Enterprises." Gasps rippled. Elise looked down. "But last night we discovered something," he said, lifting a flash drive from his pocket. "Thanks to our system backup, we recovered erased CCTV footage, and what it shows is very clear." The screen behind him lit up. Footage played of Crystal entering the finance wing late at night, using a stolen passcode to access a locked terminal. Footage of her inserting a USB. Footage of her leaving with a sly smile. The room exploded with murmurs. Tasha paled. Crystal stood up. "That could be anyone. That's not proof." "It is when paired with the bank trace," Denzel said calmly. "We followed the digital trail. The funds were rerouted through a dummy account, then to your name. And you used Elise's credentials to authorize the fake approvals." Crystal's mouth opened, then closed again. Her face lost color. Security officers stepped forward. Denzel looked at her one last time. "You framed an innocent woman. You tried to destroy someone because you feared what you could never become." Crystal turned to Elise, her voice cracking. "You think this makes you better than me?" Elise stood slowly, her voice like steel wrapped in velvet. "No, it just makes me not a monster." As Crystal was led away, the room remained silent. No one laughed now, no one smirked. All eyes turned to Elise. She didn't gloat, she didn't cry. She simply stood with dignity. Later that afternoon, Denzel walked into the break room where Elise was refilling her cup of tea. He watched her for a moment before saying softly, "I owe you an apology." She turned surprised. "You believed me," she said. "Eventually," he admitted, "but I should have believed you from the beginning." Elise looked away. "It's okay." "It's not," he said, "but I want to make it right." She smiled faintly. "How?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folded note. "Have dinner with me," he said, "as Elise. Not as junior staff, not as the girl who survived this, just you." Elise laughed, a soft, nervous laugh. "Are you asking me out, Mr. CEO?" "I'm asking you to trust me," he replied. "No titles." She nodded. "One dinner." "We'll see where it goes," he said. That night, Elise returned to the little house with the flickering porch light and the smell of real food always wafting from inside. Mrs. Amara stood at the door waiting, still dressed simply, but there was a calm majesty about her now. Elise hugged her tightly. "Mama," she said, "it's over." Mrs. Amara smiled. "No, my daughter, it's just beginning." Inside, over bowls of steaming soup, Elise told her everything. The speech, the footage, the justice, the dinner invitation. "And you said yes?" Mrs. Amara asked, teasing. Elise blushed. "I said maybe." Mrs. Amara laughed softly. Then she stood and walked to a cabinet, pulling out a black velvet box. She placed it on the table. Elise looked at it curiously. "What's this?" "Something that belongs to you," Mrs. Amara said. Elise opened it. Inside was a simple gold bracelet etched with the initials JKA. Elise looked up, confused. "Joseph Kinte Amara," the older woman said quietly. "My husband, founder of Orion, and my son is Denzel." Elise froze. Her mouth opened, then shut. "Mama, I didn't lie," Mrs. Amara said gently, "but I also didn't tell the truth. I needed to see your heart before I gave you my trust." Elise's hands trembled. You're not just a cleaner." "No," she said, taking Elise's hand. "I'm a mother, and I wanted to find a daughter worth trusting. You passed every test." Elise stared at her, heart thudding. "You set all this up." "Life set it up, Mrs." Amara said with a twinkle. "I just paid attention." Outside, the city sparkled like possibility. Somewhere across town, Denzel sat in his office, staring at a photo of his parents on the wall and thinking about the girl with quiet fire in her eyes. In a world of masks, he had finally found something real. And Elise, now walking home beneath a sky bruised by sunset, whispered to herself, "Maybe, just maybe, I belong here." Because in the end, it wasn't power or beauty or wealth that brought them together. It was kindness. The kind that mops floors without resentment. The kind that shares soup without asking. The kind that stands tall even when the world pushes you down. And in that kind of love, everything begins again.